Have you ever experienced being asked to relocate so someone deemed more significant could take your place? This gentleman's reaction caused an entire airline to deeply regret their decision. When I first encountered him, his appearance didn't suggest he was about to become newsworthy. He appeared to be just another traveler at Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport on that particular Wednesday evening, dressed in a fitted dark blue jacket over a basic gray shirt, black denim, and shined leather shoes. Leonard Bristow was his name, a 47-year-old entrepreneur who founded and led Bristow Dynamics, a technology firm providing sophisticated IT services to multiple major companies, including a prominent national air carrier. He had successfully concluded one of his most significant business deals in Phoenix the previous day and was returning to his company's base in San Diego. This journey represented more than simple transportation for him. It offered an opportunity to relax, finally embrace some tranquility, and perhaps even request a whiskey before departure. He traveled without an entourage or assistant organizing documents behind him, carrying only his elegant black luggage and a leather portfolio under his arm. The airport terminal buzzed with activity, yet Leonard remained composed. He possessed a talent for navigating spaces without attracting unwanted notice, a skill he had developed early in his professional life when others frequently misjudged him before discovering his true identity. Several passengers cast brief looks his way, the type of glances people give strangers they believe they might know from somewhere but can't quite place. When first-class boarding was announced, Leonard was among the initial passengers to rise. He approached the gate with composure, presented his ticket for scanning, and proceeded down the jet bridge toward seat 1A, his preferred location. This wasn't merely about additional legroom or premium treatment. It was the position he had occupied numerous times during business travel. For Leonard, that seat represented reliability in an existence where little else remained constant. As he got comfortable, Leonard surveyed his surroundings. The cabin carried a subtle scent of lemon cleaning solution, and the leather headrest felt refreshingly cool against his palm. He placed his portfolio beneath the seat ahead of him and slipped his mobile device into the adjacent pocket. He anticipated nothing out of the ordinary. He had performed this routine countless times previously. However, comfort, as he was soon to discover, can be misleading. 2 rows behind his position, a younger gentleman in his late 20s, tall with light brown hair, bordered with an air of self-assurance. He wore a light blue dress shirt with rolled sleeves and expensive sunglasses resting atop his head. Leonard initially paid him little attention, but within moments, this individual would become the focal point of an encounter Leonard couldn't disregard and would long remember. The flight crew was completing their pre-departure inspections when Leonard detected the sound of deliberate footsteps drawing near. He glanced up to observe a flight attendant, petite with defined facial features, stopping beside his row. Her manner was courteous, yet her words carried an uncomfortable tension. "Mr. Bristow," she started, briefly looking over her shoulder. "We need to request that you change seats temporarily. There's been a confusion, and another traveler was given this seat assignment." Leonard appeared puzzled, taken aback. "I apologize, but this seat belongs to me. It's printed on my ticket." She acknowledged quickly. "I realize that, sir, but this gentleman," she indicated discreetly toward the younger man now positioned near the service area, "was meant to have this seat reserved." Leonard's forehead creased. Reserved. He understood airline seating procedures. No VIP reservation system existed that could override a confirmed first-class ticket at the final moment. Not without an extraordinary circumstance. Nevertheless, something in her tone suggested this wasn't concerning a clerical mistake. Whatever the situation, it was about to propel this peaceful journey into unknown circumstances. Leonard remained seated, maintaining proper posture, his voice remaining steady. "I made this reservation weeks in advance. First class, seat 1A. I fail to comprehend why I should relocate at this point." The flight attendant shifted her stance nervously. Her gaze briefly darted toward the young man who was casually positioned against the wall near the service area, arms crossed as if he possessed unlimited time. "It's simply, he maintains frequent VIP status with our airline," she stated quietly, almost with regret. "It would simplify matters for us if you could accept a different seat for this journey." Leonard sensed the subtle atmosphere change within the cabin around him. Several other first-class passengers were now observing, pretending disinterest while clearly monitoring every word. The situation wasn't loud, but an undercurrent of curiosity flowed through the air. He turned his attention and finally examined the man for whom they requested his relocation. The individual wore a slight smirk, as though this entire situation was merely a minor inconvenience for him, yet also something he anticipated would resolve in his favor. He offered no greeting, made no effort to suggest, it's not important. He simply returned Leonard's gaze as if waiting to observe whether he would yield. Leonard's voice maintained its calm tone. "And where would you seat me?" The flight attendant hesitated. "Seat 3C, it remains first class, just several rows further back." Several rows back held no significance for Leonard regarding service quality. It mattered because he recognized precisely what this situation represented. The man behind him didn't desire seat 1A because it offered superior amenities. He wanted it because it symbolized his priority status. Currently, the crew appeared willing to displace him to satisfy that expectation. He prepared to respond, but at that moment another passenger, an elderly woman seated across the aisle, interjected. Why should he relocate? He's already positioned where he rightfully belongs. Her voice carried firmness with the type of authority that causes people to pause. The flight attendant's expression tightened, but she didn't acknowledge the woman. Instead, she returned her attention to Leonard, waiting. In that instant, Leonard reflected on the previous 2 decades, recalling times when he had been mistaken for someone's aide rather than the business owner, remembering networking events where people dismissed him until they discovered his name appeared on the contracts. He had mastered selecting his confrontations, but he had also learned that certain moments defined more than merely the following hour. They determined who you were to yourself. "I will not move," he declared finally, his tone calm yet unwavering. The flight attendant provided a curt nod and proceeded toward the galley. Leonard could detect muffled conversations, hers and another crew member's, before she returned wearing a forced smile. "Very well, Mr. Bristow," she announced. "We'll determine what can be arranged." She departed once more, but this time the younger man's expression had transformed from confident to mildly annoyed. The remaining passengers resumed their quiet discussions, but Leonard understood this situation wasn't concluded. Something indicated the crew hadn't finished attempting to remove him from that seat. However, he didn't yet realize how public and embarrassing their subsequent effort would become. The boarding procedure continued slowly, and Leonard could sense the tension returning to the cabin. Passengers were getting settled, storing their belongings, and examining safety information. Yet occasionally he noticed the younger man glancing in his direction, like someone observing a chess match while awaiting the next move. It occurred sooner than Leonard anticipated. The same flight attendant returned, this time accompanied by another crew member, taller with a brisk, businesslike attitude. The taller individual leaned slightly toward Leonard's row. "Mr. Bristow," he started, "I'm concerned there's been a seating communication error. We truly require you to move so this passenger can occupy his designated position. It's crucial to our operations today." Leonard raised an eyebrow. "Crucial to your operations or crucial to him?" His voice remained steady, not elevated, but sufficient for nearby passengers to look up again. The younger man finally approached, displaying a thin smile. "Listen, friend. I travel with this airline weekly. Seat 1A is my regular spot. It's nothing against you personally." Leonard faced him. Nothing personal becomes exactly that when you expect another person to surrender a seat they purchased simply because you desire it. The tension between them intensified. The flight attendant quickly interrupted. "Gentlemen, please. We can settle this without." "What?" The elderly woman across the aisle interrupted again, her voice expressing disbelief. "Without creating a disturbance? This is a disturbance, and he's not the one causing it." A gentleman in the second row agreed. "The ticket determines the seat. That's the end of it." Leonard observed the crew exchange a quick, uncomfortable look. They clearly hadn't anticipated passenger involvement, but rather than retreating, the taller attendant's tone became more assertive. "If you refuse to cooperate, sir, we might need to postpone departure." Leonard settled back in his seat, maintaining steady eye contact. "If that's what's required, then I suppose we're postponing. I'm not relocating." Several people murmured quietly, some irritated by the delay, others clearly supporting him. The younger man's jaw clenched, but he stepped away, retrieving his phone as if to occupy himself. The crew departed again, and Leonard exhaled slowly. He had maintained his position, but he knew the situation wasn't finished. This type of confrontation didn't simply dissolve. Minutes afterward, an announcement played over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're completing our seating arrangements, and will depart momentarily. Thank you for your patience." Leonard caught the phrase seating arrangements like an alarm. He knew they were still maneuvering behind the scenes, but he had no idea their next action would involve drawing the entire cabin's attention to him. The aisle was nearly empty now, with only a few passengers still moving to their seats. Leonard had just opened a document from his briefcase when he noticed two figures returning. The same tall flight attendant from before, now accompanied by a uniformed ground supervisor. The supervisor's polished identification badge reflected the overhead lighting, and his smile was the type people display when attempting pleasantness while delivering unwelcome news. "Mr. Bristow," the supervisor announced in a voice loud enough for the front cabin section to hear. "We must ask you one final time to relocate to another seat so we can accommodate our premium member." Several passengers immediately looked up. This was no longer quiet. They were broadcasting the confrontation for everyone to observe. Leonard set his document aside and responded, "I must tell you once more. I will not move. I possess a confirmed seat and boarded according to my ticket." The supervisor glanced toward the young man still positioned in the galley area, then returned his attention to Leonard. "Sir, refusing to follow crew instructions can result in aircraft removal." Leonard felt warmth rise in his chest, not from fear, but from recognizing how those words were intended to pressure him publicly. It was a strategy, forcing someone to surrender by making them feel like the troublemaker. From across the aisle, the elderly woman's voice cut through once more. "This is ridiculous. You cannot simply remove a paying passenger because someone else wants his seat." Now murmurs spread throughout first class. A man 2 rows back spoke up. "Yes, that's not the proper procedure. This is wrong." Leonard noticed the younger man shift uncomfortably, his smirk disappearing, but the supervisor persisted. "We're requesting cooperation so we can depart punctually. If you prefer, I can escort you to the gate desk for discussion." Leonard met his stare. "So you're proposing to remove me from my purchased seat to have a conversation about why I should surrender it to someone else? Is that accurate?" The supervisor avoided a direct response. "Sir, it would be preferable if we could resolve this without additional disruption." Leonard leaned forward slightly, lowering his voice while ensuring it carried enough for nearby passengers to hear. "The only disruption is you standing here requesting I surrender something I legitimately purchased. If this truly concerned a clerical error, you would be asking him to move, not me." The silence that followed was profound. Passengers looked between them, waiting to see who would yield first. Finally, the supervisor's smile faded. "Very well. Remain in your seat. We'll arrange alternative accommodations." Without another word, he turned and walked toward the galley, the tall attendant following closely behind. Leonard leaned back again, but his muscles remained tense. He could sense every glance in the cabin, some supportive, some curious, some irritated that the flight was taking longer to depart. Throughout the remaining taxiing and takeoff, he kept his attention focused outside the window, not on the man seated just a few rows back who clearly didn't receive what he wanted. However, Leonard also didn't realize how deeply the resentment would penetrate after the flight, and how quickly that quiet anger would solidify into something much more significant. The aircraft landed in San Diego just after sunset. Leonard waited for the crowd to disperse before retrieving his carry-on from the overhead compartment. The younger man avoided eye contact as Leonard stepped into the aisle. He could sense the elderly woman across the aisle offering him a small acknowledgement, her way of expressing, "You made the correct choice." But the correct choice didn't provide satisfaction at that moment. The encounter had left an impression, not merely because of what occurred, but because of how it happened, publicly, intentionally, and with the assumption that he would comply. Walking through the terminal, Leonard reviewed every detail. The way the flight attendant had avoided direct eye contact when she first requested his relocation. The thinly disguised important to our operations explanation. The smirk on the younger man's face. The supervisor's public threat of aircraft removal. It all accumulated like evidence in a case he hadn't chosen to fight. By the time he entered his black sedan outside the airport, the city lights were twinkling across the bay. His driver, a middle-aged man with a friendly smile, inquired if the flight had proceeded smoothly. Leonard simply replied, "We arrived," and left it at that. At home, he placed his briefcase on the kitchen counter and poured himself a glass of water. His phone was already vibrating with emails from his executive team regarding the Phoenix deal. Normally, that would have improved his mood. Tonight, it didn't. Instead, he sat in the quiet kitchen, staring at the glass in his hand. He considered how many times throughout his career he had overlooked similar moments in the interest of maintaining harmony. But this time, the sting wasn't diminishing, it was intensifying. The airline was unaware that Bristow Dynamics wasn't merely another vendor. They were a crucial supplier of the airline's internal software systems. Everything from scheduling to maintenance records operated through platforms his company created. And with the Phoenix deal completed, His schedule for the following days was unusually free. He picked up his phone and contacted his COO, Trevor, who answered on the second ring. "You're still at the office?" Leonard inquired. "Yes, just completing the Phoenix reports." "What's happening?" Leonard's tone was calm, almost casual. "I need you to review the contracts we maintain with Western Horizons Airlines. I want the complete scope, terms, renewal dates, everything." Trevor paused. "Certainly, but why?" "I'll explain tomorrow," Leonard said. "Let's meet first thing in the morning." After disconnecting, Leonard leaned back in his chair. For the first time that evening, his thoughts weren't merely circling around what had happened. They were moving toward what could happen next. But the plan developing in his mind wasn't about revenge for one unpleasant flight. It was about ensuring the people who believed they could treat him that way learned exactly who they were dealing with. Leonard arrived at the office earlier than usual. The San Diego skyline still held the soft golden hues of sunrise as he entered the glass-fronted building housing Bristow Dynamics headquarters. The security guard greeted him warmly, and Leonard returned the acknowledgement, his mind already focused on what he was about to initiate. Trevor was waiting in the conference room with a stack of printed documents and his laptop open. "I retrieved everything," he said. "Our primary contract with Western Horizons extends through year-end. Renewal discussions are scheduled for August. We provide their flight scheduling, maintenance tracking, crew management. Essentially, if our systems went offline, they'd face chaos within hours." Leonard sat at the table's head, reviewing the pages. "And how many other companies do we have prepared who would accept this exact package if we withdrew it from Western Horizons?" Trevor smiled slightly. "3 at minimum. 2 of them are their direct competitors." Leonard closed the folder. "Then we're initiating those conversations today, discreetly. I want Western Horizons at the bottom of our priority list. No more extras, no expedited support, no special consideration. They treated me like a bother on my own ticket. Let's observe how they handle being a bother in their own operations." Trevor's eyebrows lifted. "This is about what occurred on your flight." Leonard reclined. "It's about respect. They made a choice to publicly push me aside for someone they valued more. Not because of money, not because of status, but because they believed they could. I want them to understand that the seat they took from me yesterday might be the most expensive seat they've ever moved." Trevor nodded slowly. "Do you want me to give them advance notice?" "No," Leonard said firmly. "Let it impact them when it matters." For the remainder of the morning, Leonard and his senior team examined every connection point the airline had with Bristow Dynamics. They outlined exactly how to redirect their resources toward other clients, all without violating the terms of their current contract. It wasn't vindictive, it was strategic. By noon, calls were already being placed to 2 competing airlines, both of which were enthusiastic to learn how quickly Bristow Dynamics could customize their systems to meet their requirements. Leonard didn't rush the presentation. He wanted this move to feel inevitable, not reactionary. As he exited the conference room, Trevor called after him, "Are you certain you don't want to simply call Western Horizons and explain why you're doing this?" Leonard paused at the doorway, a slight smile appearing at the corner of his mouth. "They'll understand, and when they do, I want them to remember that it could have been prevented with 2 simple words: enjoy your flight." But what Leonard didn't anticipate was how quickly the consequences would begin manifesting and how much panic it would generate inside Western Horizons headquarters. It began 3 days later. Leonard was in his office reviewing the Phoenix contract when Trevor entered, extending his phone. "You'll want to hear this," he said, activating the speaker function. On the line was a contact from one of Western Horizons' regional offices speaking in a rushed tone. "We have a backlog in scheduling. The systems are operating slower than usual, and our support requests aren't receiving the priority they used to. We have flights at risk of delay." Trevor looked at Leonard. Leonard simply leaned back in his chair, allowing the man on the phone to continue. By week's end, calls were coming directly from Western Horizons' corporate office. Their operations director was attempting to sound composed, but the strain was evident. "Mr. Bristow, we've observed a change in the service level we're receiving from your team. Is there something we should know about?" Leonard's response was calm and deliberate. "Your service level is precisely what our contract stipulates. Nothing more, nothing less." There was a pause on the other end. "Then would like to schedule a meeting to discuss an extension. We're prepared to make modifications to the current terms." Leonard interrupted, his voice steady. "I'm already in discussions with other carriers. We'll honor our agreement with you, but beyond that, I believe our priorities are better aligned elsewhere." It was polite, professional, and final. 2 weeks later, word was circulating throughout the industry. Bristow Dynamics was redirecting its resources to competitors. Western Horizons wasn't failing, but their operations were under strain. Their reputation was taking subtle but noticeable damage. The kind of harm that persists. One afternoon, Leonard received correspondence, not from their corporate office, but from the CEO himself. It was brief, acknowledging an incident on one of their flights, apologizing for any misunderstanding, and expressing hope they could rebuild the business relationship. Leonard read it once, then set it aside. An apology sent weeks later, only after experiencing the consequences, wasn't the same as the one that should have been offered in the moment. That night, over dinner with a close friend, Leonard summarized it. People believe disrespect is a moment, a small thing you can move past, but sometimes it's the moment that determines how the next chapter of your story is written, for you and for them. The friend nodded. So you're not returning? Leonard smiled faintly. Not unless they purchase a ticket on my flight, seat 1A. The lesson: respect is not about position or status or titles. It's about how you treat someone when you believe no one is observing. The smallest choices can carry the highest cost. And sometimes the price doesn't appear until it's far too late to repair. If you've ever been in Leonard's position, overlooked, underestimated, or pushed aside, remember, you possess more power than you realize. Use it wisely. Stand your ground when it matters and never allow someone to determine your worth for you. Because sometimes the quietest seat on the plane can become the loudest statement you ever make.